Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to Speak on the Show. This is the Barber Shop Talk, sponsored by the Speak on the Show. I'm your boy, R.W. Coolins. Welcome. Good morning. Appreciate everybody tuning in. We got a good one this morning. I got a panel with me this morning. Let's go ahead and let's get these formalities out the way first. Let's go here. 844-904-2665, 844-902-2665. That's the phone number. Call in. Say what you mean what you say. Come in as friends, we leave as family. That's what we do here on the Speak on the Show and here on the Barbershop Talk. So we're going to bring our guests in this morning. Let me find, hold on, I got a couple things I got to do this real quick. Hold on, y'all. Hold on. Comments coming in. Brian Hoodie, good morning. Good morning, Brian. Maurice Wigfall, good morning, Wig. Appreciate you, bro. Appreciate you. I think we got everybody here. It's supposed to be here, some later than others, but you know, we're not gonna judge with that. But let's go ahead and get them in here. We got my man Mac, we got my man Cheney, my man Battle, and late as usual, OT. What's going on, my people?
Oh man, what's going on? What's going on?
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning,
Good
everybody.
morning.
What's
Good
happening?
morning.
How's everybody?
Everything's good.
Good.
Y'all looking good, my brothers. Y'all looking good.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Hey, OT, I like that shirt there, brother.
Oh man, you know, bro. Gotta support.
I appreciate that. That's been a long time support right there. Right?
Yeah, man.
Yeah. All right, so this morning on the Barbershop Talk. Brace yourself. Male vulnerability. Why you laughing, OT? What's funny? And why
I got my cup right now.
Well, let's just be real. I mean, because you know, when I sent the text message out and I talked to some other people that asked me what the show was gonna be about today, I said male vulnerability. Everybody was like, whoa. A couple people laugh, a couple people like, whoa. Some people say interesting subject, you know, that kind of thing. But the thing about it is, it's something that should be talked about, but at the same time, it becomes a taboo, especially in our community. Let's just be honest about it. Am I right when I say that, or am I wrong? Y'all help me out.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
You're right.
Yeah. So, with that being said, let's start it off with this. What's the definition of vulnerability? Y'all know? Does anybody know? I got the textbook, but what's your definition of what vulnerability is? I'm gonna start with Mac, since you're in the center of the screen.
Thanks. Put me on the spot. Thank you.
Right.
I would just say vulnerability. I would somehow sum it up as being accessible to certain issues or things or what have you. So, and it could be anything. It's not necessarily a weakness. It's just being accessible, or exposure, showing some sort of exposure.
The senior statesman in the group, Mr. Battle. Vulnerability, my brother. Talk to me.
Well, I kind of agree with the term accessibility and being exposed to certain things, not necessarily looking at it as something that's going to negatively affect you, but just being exposed to those different things that you really don't have any control over.
Mm-hmm.
OT, talk to me. Come on, man.
What you got in that glass, man?
Hey, listen. Y'all want me to be vulnerable, so I'm gonna be vulnerable this morning.
I feel you.
Honesty, right? Honesty. Being secure with yourself. Basically just opening up. Opening up.
Mr. Cheney, talk to me, brother. Talk to me.
Well, I think if you're talking about being vulnerable, I think it's about letting your guard down. As a man, I know that growing up in the older generation, a lot of them had their guards up because they had to protect that male image. So for me, it's just putting your guard down, but still having the confidence in that, you are who you are.
Good point.
Mm-hmm.
All good points.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to ask this question before I give y'all the definition. Everything that y'all just said right now, at the age we are right now, do you think you would have that same mentality about vulnerability at 18, 19, 20 years old? Did you understand what vulnerability was at 18, 19, 20 years old?
If you ask me, I think that's when we guarded it the most.
Yeah.
I think that's when we were the less vulnerable, because at that time you're trying to fill out what society calls a man. And in our community, that definition's a little different. So I'd say no. I say we were less vulnerable back at that time, even in relationships.
Very true. Very, very true. So let's get into this. So the definition of vulnerability by the dictionary, not by who we are, but by the dictionary. It says the quality or state of being exposed to the possibility of being attacked or harmed, either physically or emotionally. Now,
I got a question. What dictionary you read out of, the Webster or the Hood one that we got? Because we got two dictionaries now. I'm just saying. I mean, am I being honest, fellas? We do have two dictionaries.
Yeah.
So did you read out the Webster or did you read out the Hood dictionary that we have? It's called the Urban Dictionary. Which one did you read out of? Because sound like read out the Webster.
If I didn't say urban in front of it,
well,
and I just said, wait, because let me clear this up. Because I you know what? When I just say dictionary, that's what we know it as. This Urban Dictionary thing that they added in there.
Amen.
Come on, bro. Come on. Let's be real.
It's 2022. Dictionary. They got an Urban Dictionary, bro. So
let me get the we're going back to 1985. Dictionary.
Okay. All right. Okay. Dictionary. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, see, you're making me vulnerable right now.
See? Good thing. A good thing, ain't it?
But no, this was out of the Webster's. Excuse me. Merriam-Webster. Let's get it right. Merriam-Webster. The quality or state of being exposed to the possibility of being attacked or harmed, either physically or emotionally. So now when we say that, and when everything that y'all said in the beginning, when we talk about vulnerability and what our understanding of being vulnerable is all about, right? For us, and I don't want to speak for all of us, but we'll all chime in. But I know for most of us, people I've talked to, when you say being vulnerable, that means being open to showing emotion, expressing your feelings, being open to new things coming at you and being accepting of them rather than being fearful of them. What is it about us as Black men when it comes to being vulnerable, not allowing ourselves to be vulnerable with our families and in our relationships? I'll let one of y'all start. And I know it goes back, let me say this, I know it goes back to what Mr. Cheney said, as far as our history, through slavery, all those things, we were vulnerable. We didn't allow ourselves to be vulnerable because of the conditions that we were trying to survive in. But come on now, we've been around a long time. And in the time we've been here, after we were 18, right, 19, 20 years old, we got out on our own, got in relationships. What still makes us hesitant about being vulnerable to the people we say we love? I'll let any of y'all start.
We don't want them to call us weak. We feel like when we start being vulnerable, that's when people start to, take advantage of that. That's true.
So I'm glad you said that, and I'm glad Big Al chimed in. Appreciate you, Big Al. It's a sign of weakness. Who decided that being vulnerable, from what we understand, is a sign of weakness? Is it where when we were younger and you fall down and they say, you better not cry, man up?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Boys don't cry.
Absolutely.
All those things. So we're preconditioned to think this way, right?
Absolutely. I mean, look at what we're going through right now with the mental health deal. Yeah. Like men, Black women and men, but mostly men, if we say that we have issues with our mind, then it's considered weak, and a couple other adjectives. But I think it's engraved in our community, and it's stigmas that we got to break, because I think they're handed down from generation to generation. Well, you change it by like you have some people speaking out on it now, some big people that are going through it, and we gotta get the word out in our community. We gotta change that.
Mac, how you feel?
I agree with everything he just said. I think it's over time throughout history, it's always been kind of taught to us, if you will, that you were never to show any sign of weakness, and vulnerability was one of those signs of weakness. Whether it be in the workplace, whether it be out in the streets, whether it be in a relationship, it was always thought of like real men don't cry, real men don't show any sort of emotion or what have you. So I agree with everything he just said in regards to it.
Talk to me, Battle.
Yeah, I totally agree. I know personally, that's the way I was brought up. My father was that way. My father was the type of person who never really showed any emotions. He didn't hug kids. He didn't tell others. He was a totally different type of person that I am. But I made a concerted effort as I was growing up to try to change that in myself, because I did not want to be I didn't want to be that same. Not that I don't want to be like my father. My father was a great person, but in that sense, I did not want to be. I didn't want to follow in those footsteps.
Right. No, it's understood. It's understood. And I think if you took a poll and lined up 10 Black men and asked them, probably 7 would have the same story. Mm-hmm. But 10 would tell you that they don't want to be like, if it wasn't their father, their uncle, their grandfather, or anybody in their family in that way. So I'm gonna put this caveat in there, and I'm gonna ask this question. So we talk about that, and Battle led into what I wanted to say, but we know and we hear of different people's parents or uncles or grandparents, and a lot of our grandparents, and I'll be honest, a lot of our grandparents didn't talk much. But when they said what they said, they meant what they said. right? But the traumas of what they've seen,
Right.
what they dealt with, and what they would continue to deal with caused a lot of that vulnerability to be suppressed. Let's put it that way, suppressed. And it came out in other ways: the drinking, the abuse, the lack of affection, all the different things we can think of that Battle just talked about, and we all talked about. So I'll ask this question: when we talk about that, how is it that now we can identify what we don't want to be as far as emotionally and different things like that, right? But at the same time, we're still fighting the same battles they're fighting in a different way. So how is, as we talked about on the last show, the racism, the things going on, the social construct of this country that we deal with every day and everything, how is that affecting our ability to be vulnerable, not only towards our children and our family, but in the world as a whole? Somebody help me with that. How's that balance? How do we balance that?
Well, I think you got to find that balance, because if we continue to be the way we used to be, we'll never change. So we got to find that change, but at the same time, we still have to maintain a certain, I'd say, even if you want to say masculinity, we got to still maintain a certain, we just can't fall apart, but still be able to show that vulnerability. Like for me, I've made it so if something happens and it's serious and I cry, then I'm going to cry. I don't fight not to cry in front of my kids or in front of my family. I don't cry over anything and everything, but if it's serious enough, I've made that decision that I'm going to cry. And I've also made the decision that when I get a chance, every chance I get, I tell my kids, especially my boys, that I love them. Something that I never heard, like Battle said, I never heard that from my grandfather, my dad, but I knew it. I knew by what they did that they loved me. But like he said, no hugging, no telling you I love you, no kisses. But it's just we got to make that change. That's my opinion.
Let me add something. I'm gonna interject here something real quick because something you said just triggered me. So we talked in Battle, and you both have mentioned your fathers, your grandfathers. I mentioned uncles and everything like that. What part do our mothers play in this, or our grandmothers, as far as us being able to be vulnerable even towards them? Is that a difference? Because we're harping on our fathers, the male figures that we see. What about the female figures? Because you got some females that would tell you, you better not cry, man up, all those type things too. So I bring that up because I don't want this to seem like we just beating up on the fathers and they made us this way. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
What I want to do is look at it in the full construct of family, where we do have mothers that have been traumatized from certain experiences and everything, maybe bad relationships or abuse or anything like that, that will cause your vulnerability to be stunted as well. Does that make sense? Because I think what we have to look at is the full spectrum of it, because when we talk about Black women, even to this day, they're the most educated, but the most disrespected. And it comes off where, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole too deep, but I'm just going to touch on it, where I'm an independent woman. I make my own money. I don't need a man. I don't need this. And we hear this thing. And when we get into a relationship with someone who may have that mentality or had that mentality before you got in a relationship with him, our vulnerability seems to take a back seat, because them showing power and showing independence causes us to change our whole demeanor to be not vulnerable, but to put on this facade that I'm as strong as you. And when we talk about the single parent home, that can be an impact on on a young man's vulnerability growing up, even to this day as an adult. So T, talk to me. How do you feel about that?
Well, I never had to go through that problem, right? Because I was always vulnerable to my mother, right? And my mom always expressed to me, and my grandmom always expressed to me, to show your feelings, So I showed my feelings to them, didn't show my feelings to my dad, but I showed it to them. You know what I mean?
So stop once. Let me ask this. Let me ask this question too. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but let me put this in there. Would the lack of us being vulnerable to our fathers or grandfathers or uncles, would it be more of a fear factor of because we don't see it from them and not wanting to show them compared to our moms who are the nurturers by nature and everything like that? Would that play a part in it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think so.
100%.
Okay.
But now I cry though. Now I cry. I cried to him. So, you know what I mean? He cried too. So
but that's growth.
Yeah,
that's growth.
Yeah.
And the growth is, and not to put your business out, but there's growth and relationships become closer.
Yeah.
When there's something that happens, traumatic experiences causes that. Because what you didn't cry with your father about before, you can cry with your father about now because y'all dealing with the same experience.
Yep.
You see what I'm saying? So Mac, talk to me, man.
I mean, dead on. As far as from the females, as far as the important females in my life, I've always been that type. I hide certain stuff like that, or I won't necessarily say hide, but withhold certain things from my mom, especially because I feel like I'm going to take that on. She doesn't need to be worried about that. So I'm going to take it on, and I'm not going to show that it may be bothering me in some sense or what have you. I'm going to handle it. I'll deal with it internally or in private, but I won't show any sort of vulnerability in front of my mom about it.
So let me ask you this: when you say that, if you don't show it to your mom and you internalize it, this is a barbershop talk. When you go to the barbershop, that's one of the places you can go talk sports, politics, anything going on in the world. But would you express vulnerability in a barbershop?
No.
Okay. So the reason I ask that is if you're not talking to your mother, you're not talking to your significant other, you're suppressing it and holding it in. How do you release that? How do you get that out in order to be able to continue to function? Because sometimes it's hindering your growth.
I'd say it would depend. It's different for each one of us. So I would say everybody would have to find their own release, if you will. Mine, for me, you know, I do have a very close friend of mine. We've known each other probably 30 plus years, what have you. I would lean on him, bounce stuff off of him before I bounce certain things off of my mom, my sisters, even my daughter. So, and that's just me. That would be my out.
So I'll ask this question too, Mac, and I ain't trying to beat you up, but you keep touching on some things here. But
yeah, go ahead.
So you'll go to your friend, you know, because you got that relationship. But at the same time, when you say that, you know, there's certain things you won't talk to your mom about or your significant other and everything like that, is it the fact that we fear what they may say? Because one thing we always do is we say we're protecting them. There's certain things that they should not have to deal with or we don't want them to deal with. But are we truly protecting them, or are we protecting ourselves from being seen as being vulnerable, soft, or weak because our mindset is already there, whether it's our mother or our significant other? So we go talk to our boy, and the way we talk to our boys about it, it'll be completely in a way that don't sound weak, don't sound vulnerable, but it'll be a way to get it out to say, this is what I'm dealing with, because more than likely, they've dealt with it too. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, like I'll give you an example. My younger brother, he feels comfortable saying anything to my mother. They have that relationship where he can tell her anything. I can't. Certain things that I have a limit that mom can know, and I won't feel comfortable talking to her about certain things. So it's relationships too.
What caused that to get to the point where you don't feel that you're comfortable telling her those things? Who are you protecting?
This
is just a serious question.
Man. I mean, that's obvious. There's certain things that you don't want to be that vulnerable with your mother.
Right.
Certain things like especially being the oldest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, that I think that plays a part in it too.
Right.
But it's just plus it's a comfortability too. My mom is a female, so there's certain things that if you know, I'll give you an example: dealing with sex or growing up dealing with certain issues. I
Mhm.
just didn't feel
Fact.
comfortable talking to my mother about it.
Facts.
Yeah.
So you know, and but he does, and and that's their relationship. So,
Yeah.
and I want to say one other thing too. I think one of the things I hear a lot in the black community is, I don't need nobody. I don't have to ask
Mm,
nobody for
mm,
nothing.
mm.
So that's a mentality that we take on. That's I think it deals with what we're talking about.
Mm.
I just wanted to, that's a little off topic, but
No,
just
it's
just
on topic. It's,
It's
it's
on
it's on
top.
topic, and I'll tell you why it's on topic. It's on topic because it is that cliche that we use as a protection mechanism
Mhm.
that I don't need anybody. I can do this by myself, or I don't need nobody. I've done this by myself. It's a protection mechanism because, as we mentioned before, and everybody said, when you say being vulnerable, it goes into weakness, being soft. You need to man up. You need to, all those things come in. So what we do unconsciously, and I'm gonna say unconsciously, we unconsciously put these barriers in front of us, even around the people we love, for barriers of protection.
Mhm.
Because my thing is, and this is one thing that we I think we have to look at. If you really think about it, even today when we know everything about vulnerability and what it means to us and what we're vulnerable about and to who, we always have some wall of protection in front of us, no matter who we're dealing with, no matter what we're talking about, because there's certain things that we want to keep within our barrier of being who we are. It's unconsciously done. It's not doing it because if I talk to this person, that's consciously. Unconsciously, we have it up there because we never know anybody's intent on what they may do to us, how they may use our words against us. All that comes into play when you get into the vulnerable part. So I want to put that in. So when you talk about your mom like that, I'm laughing, but I think all of us can relate to that. I mean, if you really think about it, even where we're at now, there are certain things that you won't talk to your significant other about because you don't want to feel vulnerable. And if you do bring it up, it's hinted around it. It ain't specific. You may go around this bush, come up that
Mm.
street, turn down that corner, and then you get to the destination. By the time you got to the destination and say what you're gonna say, it ain't nothing about what you're feeling about.
Mhm.
So I think that's where, when we talk about vulnerability, we talk about being open and in the black community. And there was this one thing that I seen, and I want y'all to, this is something someone broke down. His name is Johnny Welch. And he was asked about vulnerability in the black community. And what he said was, and the question was, are we as a collective allowed to show pain? And his response to that was no. I think society has placed this heavy burden on men that they should always be strong and never show emotion. In fact, you shouldn't show emotion or vulnerability because you shouldn't have any of those qualities. If you do, you're considered less of a man or your sexuality becomes a question. This is especially true for Black men who are more likely to grow up in single mother households where the father figure is absent, where the child inherently takes on the role to provide and support the family while putting emotions and feelings to the side.
I, 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 all right. Well,
Talk to me, bro.
let me say this. I
Break it
think
down.
for us males, especially
Mhm.
black males, I think it's the trust factor. When you talk about vulnerability, you got to talk about the trust factor, right? So if I'm trying to be vulnerable to my significant other and tell her something that's vulnerable, and then doing a argument, she brings it up. Trust factor. I think that's why a lot of us black males is not vulnerable because of the trust factor. When I tell you something, it is not for you to bring it back up during any kind of argument. It is not for you to bring it back up during any kind of, discussion that we having, because us being vulnerable is letting you know, hey, listen, let me tell you something that's deep to me.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people bring those vulnerability issues back up. And now guess what? We ain't gonna have that conversation with you. Now our relationship is not gonna be good with you no more. So then when a woman always asks, well, how come you don't talk to me? Well, let me tell you why I don't talk to you. Because I had a conversation with you about something that was vulnerable to me, and during the midst of an argument, you bring that up. So it won't be no more conversation about, hey, how was your day? It was all right.
That's a good.
It was all right.
Great point.
So when you talk about vulnerability, we got to talk about trust, right? Can I trust my homie? Can I trust my partner? Can I trust my mother? Can I trust my dad? Right? It's the trust factor. And a lot of times we don't never bring that up, but that's what it is. Can I trust you with the secret that I'm about to tell you? Right? And a lot of times we get burnt a whole lot. There's a whole lot of burning. It is.
No, and you make a good point, because we gonna go down that rabbit hole a little later on about relationships. I didn't want to go that deep yet, but since you touched on it, my brother, because here's the thing about what you said. Trust is a big factor. So with that being said, and everything that OT said, would you equate our trust in someone is what would dictate how much vulnerability we show with that person?
Yes, I would say yes.
It shouldn't, but it does.
Yep.
And that's what I'm looking at. It shouldn't, but it does. And the thing is this, and Battle, I want you to chime in on this one. When we're young, we trust our parents with our lives, right? Because that's all we know is to trust our parents with our lives. However, can we equate trust to vulnerability when we say it is based on trust, but the main people we trust, learn to trust, is our parents? And we've just had a discussion where our parents didn't even show us vulnerability, so we couldn't be vulnerable to them. We didn't cry in front of our fathers. We don't talk to our mothers about certain things. All this kind of, so now you get into this point of, we say trust, but at the same time, can you say you truly trust them? These are your parents you're talking about now. Talk to me about it. Battle, you there?
Look like Battle and froze up.
Yes.
Battle was he was in deep thought. He was in deep thought.
That as I was growing up. Oh, did I freeze up?
Yeah, you're good though. Go ahead.
But as I was growing up though, I could trust my mom with pretty much anything, and I talked to her about almost everything. And I was lucky to have older siblings, so I had older brothers, older sisters, so I was able to talk to them about a lot of things that I was going through. And I think as I got older and got into relationship, got married and all that, then it made it easier for me to talk to my spouse, because I was able to talk to my siblings. However, when I had things that were really difficult, I didn't even go to them about things. I just held everything out until one day I went to the doctor, and my doctor told me, "You're depressed." And I said, "No, I'm not depressed." I said, "Why do you say I'm depressed?" She said, "Oh, I can tell." And finally, I had to admit about a lot of things that I never really admitted before. So now I'm in a much better place than I was before. So I think I learned a lot from that whole thing.
What Battle just said is something that is rampant within our communities. We have people that we talk to every day, and one of us may be on this screen. Let's just be honest about it. Maybe me, maybe you, I don't know. But we suppress and our traumatic experience we have dealt with them in our own way. That depression, that mental health issues, all those things are bubbling under the surface, and we don't even recognize it. And a lot of it comes from us not allowing ourselves to be vulnerable in certain situations towards certain people. You know, and I'll give a prime example. We all reacted differently. Probably, I'll say we reacted differently, but the concept was the same when we seen George Floyd killed on the street. When we seen Jordan Neely killed in the subway, our reactions were probably the same. The emotions were probably the same, right? But then the question comes in when you see that as a Black man, how do you react to it? Do you internalize all that? Are you talking to somebody? Are you angry about it? All those things come into play. And the reason I say that is because I think the things that we visualize and we see, I think sometimes we internalize so much and don't talk to anybody about it, it's just building up. When we talk about slavery and the things that went on, one of the biggest things that I say, and I was thinking about this morning. Before I say that, Mac, when's the first time you ever seen a grown man cry?
I would have to say during my career, giving a notification to a father that his young daughter just committed suicide.
Talk to me, Cheney. When's the first time you've ever seen a grown man cry?
I can't remember when I was younger, so it had to be 20 or over. It wasn't while I was young. And you talking about growing up in the 70s, early 80s.
Right.
So I didn't see much crying.
Battle, talk to me.
So,
same question.
I don't remember. I don't remember seeing anyone when I was younger growing up. I think the first time I saw a man cry was when I was in basic training. That was the first time I saw a man cry.
And that wasn't a man. That was somebody coming to becoming a man.
But he wasn't quite a man yet. He wasn't quite a man yet. But
OT, talk to me.
5.5 years ago.
5.5 years ago. So I want all y'all to think about these answers that we just gave. And I can say honestly, I had to think about it too. And I couldn't come up with an actual time. But I would tell you this. A lot of our mindset is our families, but a big part of it is what we see through movies, TV, different things like that. Think about every movie you've ever watched, from Roots to Good Times. Any of those movies you watched back in the day that showed us struggling and trying to become better than who we are. And think about how many times you ever seen a teardrop on that screen. I tell you, the first one that came to my mind, Glory. When Denzel was being beat and that tear ran, that was one of the first movies I remember in my memory that we've seen a man cry, being vulnerable because of the situation he was in. Hey, James Evans never cried.
But now, I mean, if you said that now, I was thinking about family. John Q.
No, I was talking about family. Listen to the point I'm making. I was talking about family. But what I'm saying is, other than family, where did we, other than TV and movies, where did we see emotion shown in that way? Very rarely on TV as well.
But even with that example, though, remember, he only showed vulnerability to an extent.
That's
never made a sound.
Yeah,
never made a sound.
That's what I was gonna say. That tear.
Yeah. He was determined to let them know, like, listen, y'all still didn't break me.
Right.
Yeah.
And as much as we know about slavery, in today, what we understand it to be, think about the vulnerability or lack of vulnerability that these men that were being beaten, shackled, all the things that went on with them, that the stories trickled up through generations to probably our great grandparents and grandparents. to cause that vulnerability or lack of vulnerability to trickle into who we are today.
Wow.
Well,
That's what I'm saying. Those traumas, that stigma, all that plays a part.
Society. I
Yeah.
was going to say the same thing. As Black men, is still a certain degree which we can show vulnerability, because it's still. I mean, things aren't perfect today. So, as Black men, we still have to watch. When we can be vulnerable and when we can't. In the workplace, in public, there's still certain places where we can't show that kind of emotion.
Mm-mm. And this was another one I found. And this was by Aji Bugum, January 6, 2021, from an article she wrote about vulnerability, race, and sexual assault. And this is what she said. For Black men, the most perilous emotion to publicly display is vulnerability. Hailing from the days of slavery, the Black man is asked to be hypermasculine, sexual, and aggressive. Deviations from these stereotypes can prove dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked that question to lead into this, because here's the thing. And I did some reading on this, and it kind of, I got to stop reading so much. But anyway, because you internalize a lot of these things, but from reading that, and then I thought about what we portray, and that's why I asked the question, what we seen portrayed in like Roots and in the movies we watch and all these things. We always seen a strong Black man standing up against the oppression, oppressor, or whatever, but we always seen him being strong. Even when he went home, they didn't show his vulnerability to his woman, his kids, or anything like that. So these portrayals of who we had to be and what we had to show, it's in us. And it's not an excuse to say that we shouldn't be vulnerable, because obviously we all are at a point in our lives where we are vulnerable to our feelings and emotions and things like that. But history, and every day we go out and we struggle as a Black man, because you have to, and this was another one, and then we're going to go into this because I'm going to ask a question about this. Let's bleed into the relationship part when we talk about vulnerability. Your guy, this is for women, your guy is being vulnerable with you when he doesn't feel the need to be anyone other than who he truly is. He can share his beliefs, ideas, opinions, and thoughts, even when they differ from yours. He doesn't feel the need to try to be someone else because he feels safe and free to be exactly who and what he is. But the caveat of that is, they're saying, when your guy's vulnerable, he's opening up to you and everything like that. But here's the other part of that. You have some men, when they come home, they're expected to be a certain way. They put on that mask. And it says, I can't give a performance all day on the job, then come home and give a performance all night in my house. Think about that for a minute. As a Black man, when you come home, you want peace in your home. Let's go here now. Let's go here. You've had a bad day. You've been dealing with a lot of things where somebody might have called you the N-word, anything extreme that you may have did, but because you're a Black man and you come home and you have to put on an act at home in order to have peace in your home. How many people are dealing with that?
I think that's probably one of the reasons why a lot of relationships in our community don't work out. Because I think, all right, it affects us, but I think it also affects the women in that how they have to interact with us. I mean, I think that forces them to look at you a certain way, like you better not cry. And so they have those same standards pushed onto them. So now they're looking at you in a way that society looks at you. Mm-hmm. So I think that they're a victim to that just as much, maybe not as much as us, but to a certain degree.
You say they're a victim to it as well. And I agree with that. But let's talk about the other side where they're the proprietors of it as well.
Okay.
You have to look at both sides now.
I agree with that. I mean,
You know,
don't get me wrong. I agree with that.
Yeah, and I only put that out there because we got to make sure we understand that there's two sides to every coin when we talk about this, because you can be one of those men that come home and everything's fine, but do you have a mask on? You can come home and everything's fine, but does she have a mask on? The vulnerability aspect of that is who, and as OT mentioned, and you may not say it right away, but if you told your woman something in confidence and it was brought up in a conversation or argument later on, you may not say nothing at that time, but because your trust has been broken, now your vulnerability is changed. So now when you come in that house, are you coming to a peaceful home, or are you coming in with a mask on in order to keep peace in your home?
Well, I gotta say this. I forgot. I was watching something, and a lady said on there, and she was like, "How come you can't give me what you give your job? Why can't you come home and give me that smiling face that you give your boss all the time? You know what I mean? Why can't you?" As she called it, shucking and jiving at work. Why can't you come home and shuck and jive too? And that struck me a little bit, man. That struck me a little bit because I sit back and I think how we put on this portrayal when we at work, like everything's supposed to be fine, but when we get home, like he said, you know, we it's supposed to be peace at the home. I think we all is actually putting on a mask. I think the woman is putting on a mask, the man is putting on a mask, and I don't think no one is actually being very truthful with themselves when it comes down to, you know, uh, being in a household together. Because she probably got some things that she want to say that she can't really say to us because we might look at her totally different. You know what I mean? So I think we all put on that mask, but I think we put on a mask a little bit more than they do because they are the proprietors of, hey, man up. Don't you goddamn show that girl that you scared of this and of that. And you know, women are one of the biggest dictators when it comes down to males. When it comes down to that.
Talk to me, Matt.
I agree. I mean, you know, I guess one of my biggest things has always been stuff I've seen, death and so forth throughout my career. I never felt comfortable coming home and actually talking about that, because I guess a certain part of me, first off, will say, you can't possibly understand the stuff that I've seen and dealt with in the work environment. And then the second part of me is saying, do I want you to be exposed to that and understand it? So again, I would find a different release. I would find somebody else that can relate to it, and I'd get it out with them and release it. But I wouldn't come home and expose that. I just wouldn't let it out. And I've seen a lot of bad stuff, but to this day, there's still certain things I haven't talked about within the home, and they'll probably go to my grave with me.
Battle.
Yeah, I think it comes down to also just understanding each other. A lot of times I feel like sometimes my wife or my daughter or somebody may be talking about something that to me it seems a little petty, I guess, because I've been in management, I guess, for a long time. So some things feel petty to me that they feel is very serious issues. And they may not think I'm understanding it the way that it should be, and vice versa. Sometimes I might be talking about something that's petty to them, but for me it's very serious. So sometimes that results in you know, those types of conversations that can be uncomfortable like that sometimes. So it just comes back down to trying to understand each other and not determining what's petty and not. And that's hard to do, to be honest with you. So for me though, that's where it is a lot of times.
Becomes a balancing act. Cheney, talk to me. Cheney.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I didn't know if you heard. Oh, you good. You good.
I agree. I agree totally. I just like to say this too. Like, if you listen to what women are attracted to, what are they attracted to? They want the roughneck. They want and they don't want the vulnerable man. They don't want the sensitive man. They don't want they want the tough guy. So that I think that plays into it too. You know what I mean? We sometimes if you talking about putting on a mask.
Is that true though? Is that really true though? Seriously, is that true?
Oh, yeah.
Hey, listen, what's her name? Just one of those celebrity girls. She just said, "I want a reformed roughneck."
But reformed mean he's vulnerable now. Reformed mean he's vulnerable at this point. So basically what she said, I don't want a roughneck, I want somebody vulnerable. A reformed roughneck means he was a roughneck at one time, but he's new now.
But she still want some of those rough edges now.
But okay, so with that being said, with that being said, even in our most vulnerable times that we are now, with all of us being vulnerable, we still have our rough patches of who we are from our past. Let's be real. We ain't all straight vulnerable at this point. Just if somebody buck up, we bucking up. Let's just be real.
Absolutely.
So I mean, we could all say we reformed, maybe not roughneck, but we reformed from something. But the way she said it, I'm pretty sure was a funny way, because you say reform roughneck, it's like, wait a minute now.
Yeah.
Do you want to reform criminal? I mean, you never hear anybody say that.
Right.
You know,
Hey,
I get what you're saying. Yeah, but it's when we talk about the dynamics of the relationship part of being vulnerable, as OT mentioned before, it's all about the trust factor. As Max said, there's certain things that we see, that we deal with, that we don't gravitate to the point that it needs to be expressed to somebody, even though it may be eating at us. But I'll ask this question. How many of those things do you take on in that manner before the kettle explodes? How many of these things do we continue to internalize before the volcano erupts? You lash out at your woman, your mother, your brothers, your sister, anybody. You lash out at work. And the reason I ask that is because let's think about this for a minute. These things that are happening in society, the mass shootings, and all these different things we can think about. We can put excuses about, oh, they just crazy, they this, they that, but none of us know the powder keg that was simmering and bubbling under the surface before it got to that point. So I'm gonna ask one more time, and I want all y'all to chime in. How much, and not only how much, how many years of internalizing these things before the powder keg explodes? Let's be real.
I can't give a timeline, but I can tell you that it will eventually. Eventually, if you don't take care of it, it will. And I can speak from experience. That's something that that I've dealt with, that I'm dealing with, and that is internalizing things until they boil up to where I explode. And at some point you gotta make a choice. Do you want to continue? Because you know why it's happening.
Right.
You know that you suppress so many things, and then one too many, and then you blow up. So Muhammad Ali said, if you're 50 years old and you still think like you did when you was 20, you just wasted 30 years of your life. So I just try to get better every day. So I think that's the biggest thing, is to recognize it and to do something about it.
Yeah. Battle, talk to me.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. I think I'm already there in a lot of a lot of cases because I used to be a much more what is the word? I
Introvert.
used to be a lot less yeah, and I was a lot less adversarial as I am now. They have a little thing at work that when I come to work every day, they ask me if I'm James today or are you Battle today? Because when I'm Battle, I'm a totally different person than I am when I'm James. So every day my boss asks me that every day when I come in the office, he asks me, "Are you James or are you Battle today?" And I'll let him know right then which mood I'm in. So
But you know what's fun? What it's funny, but it's not funny is that when we get this per se reputation to have these different personalities and people have to prepare for them, it's one of those things where I think sometimes we got to step back and ask ourselves, wait a minute, now, what's going on with me? You know what I'm saying? And the thing is we laugh about it, but we have to look at the big picture of if people are recognizing it, what do I need to do? What is going on with me that they asking me if I'm James or if I'm Battle? You know what I'm saying? That's one of those things that when we internalizing so much, they waiting on the powder keg to explode. They just wondering when it's gonna happen.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me, OT.
that's right.
Whew. When did it explode? I could say mine exploded about a month ago.
Mm.
All of it came out. I've been holding on to it for so long. It all came out. Even though I went through therapy, I still didn't tell the therapist everything. But I was holding on to a lot of stuff, and it came out about a month ago.
Back up for a minute.
But
So you went to therapy,
yeah,
but you went to therapy
yeah.
and you basically half-assed the therapy. I'm just asking. I mean, and I'm not trying to jump on you with this, but I'm trying to make, I'm trying to expose something here.
Well, I went to therapy for my mother,
Right.
right? So we discussed those things, right? So those things was a good therapy,
Okay.
right? But it was some other things that was bubbling, you know what I mean? That I didn't talk about,
Right.
So and it came out about a month ago. Came out
But
about a month ago.
do you plan to release all that?
Oh, it's already done. It's already
Okay.
done.
Right.
It's a
And
wrap.
I asked that.
It's a
I
wrap. I
asked
didn't
that.
lost some people for this one. It's a wrap.
Well, no, and I mean I asked that because, and it's not to expose you with therapy and nothing like that, but I ask you that because a lot of times what we don't realize is the things we do express are the easy things. The things we don't are the hardest things, and we don't want to express them because that vulnerability is in that breakdown zone. Does that make sense? It's in that breakdown zone where you you just let it out. You know what I'm saying? So my thing is, if anybody, and I'll say it this way, and I've talked to therapists myself. If you're gonna go to therapy, go all in. Because if you're only gonna go halfway, there ain't no use in even signing up for it. And I'm not saying go all in from the beginning because you may not be comfortable in the beginning. But if you're gonna go.
Well, I gotta say this though, because it came out about a month ago, and that's the conversation I had with my father. Right. And that conversation was real deep because see, I never seen my dad cry,
Right.
even during my mother's funeral. Never seen him cry. And I had to ask him that question. Because my therapist told me to ask him that question. And what he seen in Vietnam, he could not turn off that switch.
There it is.
Right? And that switch is seeing bodies laid around him. People who he loved, brothers that he called his brothers, no longer is here. And even though my mother was the love of his life for 40 plus years, he couldn't turn off that switch. So my feelings came out like, yo, dude, why you not crying because of that? You know what I mean? That's mom, that's wife. You dig what I'm saying? I don't know if he cried in secret, which he probably did. Most likely that's what he probably
I'm
did.
sure
But
he
to
did.
yeah, definitely he did. In secret he did. But to internalize it, to see it for myself, that man broke down.
Right.
We hugged and that man broke down. You know what I mean? And I think it came to a point where it was he couldn't understand a mother's loss because his mother was still here,
Mm.
right? And like he told me, you won't never feel the pain that I feel of losing a wife for
Mm.
40 some years. And I told him, you won't never feel the pain like I feel the pain of losing a mother. And he realized that when he lost his mother a year later. But yeah, man, sometimes, we got switches that a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times we see a lot of things in our lives. And when we see these things, the switch is just there. It don't never get, it's just off. We don't never turn it on.
Yeah. So both of y'all, both you and your father,
Yeah,
were dealing with trauma
yeah,
that was similar,
yeah,
but without speaking on it,
yep,
y'all was internalizing it and just going through life with a mask on.
yes,
And
indeed.
that's what this conversation is all about today, man. Take the mask off.
Yeah,
Take the mask off. You'd be surprised how many people are fighting the same battle as you.
Hmm.
And until you get to have that conversation, you never know. Mac, talk to me.
I agree. Again, I've seen a lot of
No,
stuff.
no, yeah.
I'm sorry, Battle. I said Mac. I'm sorry. You.
No, it's again. I've seen.
Oh, okay. No, but can I say something when he done?
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead, Battle.
When I go? Okay. No, I just wanted to chime in on something that OT just said. Because we were just laughing about when I was telling you about when I go to work and I have the two personality kind of thing, right?
hmm
And there's a reason for that, and it is because of when I was growing up, and I think I've told you this before, but there was so much racism when I was growing up. I can remember one particular incident that was just flashing through my mind, and that was one day me and my brother and my two cousins were riding with my aunt, which is my cousin's mother, and this man, he pulls beside us in a car and just starts bumping us off the road. I mean, he kept bumping us and bumping us. He was trying to kill us basically because he was trying to run us off the road into this big ditch. And my aunt was trying her best to just keep the car on the road.
Mm.
And when I think about things like that, I see so many similarities of things that are going on now. And so I think that's the reason why I react a lot of times to the things, the way I react to a lot of things now. And it's because of those types of experiences. I I didn't, there were a period of time in my life when I didn't see those things happen so much like I do now. But they've come back. These types of things have come back. And so one of the things that my boss at work, he always asks me, he'll say, "Did you watch the news this morning?" And that's the first thing he asked me because if I say yes, I watched the news, then he knows I'm battled that day. But if I didn't watch the news, I may be in a totally different mood because I didn't see some of those types of things happen again. So
Mm.
I just wanted to chime in real quick and just kind of give a reason for why I said what I said earlier.
No, that that
Thank you
that's that's
for the
great
time.
because no, that's great because here's the thing, and I'll get back to you, Mac. I'm sorry,
That's all right.
but what you just said leads us to the point of understanding our experiences. See, this is where when we talk about racism and things like that, our experiences dictate how we deal with things on a consistent basis. We're talking about vulnerability, but in that vulnerability, our experiences, things that have happened to us, our traumas, all those things affect our vulnerability. And for something like that, when you explain the story that you just explained, and then you see the things that are going on, not only in society, but at the level of politicians. Let's just be real now. The people that are doing the legislation that we're going to live by, that's going to make and dictate our livelihood, not only is it reckoning back to those traumas, it's also dealing with my vulnerability as far as when I go to work. If I watch the news and I seen it, what about that white guy I work with that's seen the same thing on the news? Does he agree with it? Does he not agree with it? And that a vulnerability comes into play on how trustworthy I can be talking about certain things around that circle of people. I appreciate that, battle, because that's real talk. That's real talk. Go ahead, Mac. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, for me personally, spending a career of seeing people at their worst and a lot of death, I think it's important that everybody, whether it be male or female, know their limitations. Mm. And with that being said, be able to have some sort of, again, release, whether it be talking with somebody, whether it be an activity to release all of that built up aggression or anger or what have you. I think that's huge. Because again, it will eat you up. It will consume you if you don't find something to let go of, some way to release it. It will consume you.
It's and listening to battle, it took years for me to realize this from my own experiences. But when I was active duty military, there was a lot of underlying racism going on, but we're so hoodwinked and bamboozled that it doesn't happen, that we're sheltered to a certain extent. And then when we get out into the real world, we realize that this is the same thing that was going on in uniform. And then you realize that racism is not, position, or it's not dependent on where you're at or anything like that. It depends on the people within those circles that you're traveling. And the thing about it is, I can look back and recognize that when I was active duty and those type of situations were going on in the work environment where I was at, where it wasn't spoken, but you could see it, my outlet was going out and playing any and every sport that was available to me as an outlet. Looking back now, I recognize that at the time, people said, man, you play basketball, softball, run track, you're doing everything. But I was keeping myself engrossed in those things to avoid dealing with those other things. That powder keg that we talk about, it's one of those things now in our world where we're at now. We're parents. Some of us are grandparents. We're in a world now where our vulnerability can be a gift and a curse. Mm-hmm. If we really think about it, it's because of what we've seen, because we're in that middle. If you think about our generation's in that middle, we're in that middle of the Jim Crow and the civil rights movement and everything. But now we're in this new way of dealing with of the racism per se. It's not the old fashioned way of just stringing people up and doing this and doing that. Now the racism is done socially. It's done by legislation. They're trying to reverse everything that was done before. And we're in that pocket of, we seen it when it was fading, and we seen it when it's rearing its ugly head. So with that, our vulnerability as where we're at, and the people that are our age are seeing it. And our vulnerability, and I'll speak for me, because me and OT had this show last week, and I said, I'm that old brother in the community sitting on that broke lawn chair in front of the liquor store, pissed off about everything. And I say pissed off, and I had to think about this week. I don't want to say I'm pissed off, I'm angry, and before we ended up, I told OT, I'm not pissed off and angry, I'm discouraged. Mm-hmm. But this discouragement is leading to my vulnerability decreasing. And that mass growing of who I want them to see me as is increasing. Somebody jump in, man. I just can't. It's hard, bro. It's hard. And the thing is, it bleeds into our homes. It bleeds into our relationships. It bleeds into our relationships with our children when they see us in the anger, in the discouragement. And y'all help me understand this. Do you feel at this point that your hands are tied? As far as what's going on in society and affecting us as a whole, do you feel your hands are tied to a certain extent?
To a degree. To a degree. I know I had a conversation with one of my sons, my oldest son, and I know when we grew up, we said, do as we say, not as we do. But this new generation, they watch what you do. And regardless, they watch what you do. And if what you do and what you say don't add up, then there's a problem. So some way we got to find a way to break these curses so that it doesn't continue to get passed on. There's no blueprint.
Right.
There's no book to read that's going to tell us exactly how to do that. Each individual's relationships and families are different, so it's going to be a different way for those to fix it. But we got to find a way to fix it, and I think in a lot of places we're starting. You know, you got people that are speaking out against mental illness and are speaking out about getting help. So I think we just got to continue it. Got to continue to have conversations like we're having today. And I just think we can. I mean, we've come. If you look at it, we've come a long way, because like we've all talked about our parents not showing it, and that we do show it.
Right.
So we just got to continue.
Nobody else got anything to chime in on that?
Well, I mean, I'm learning. I'm learning a lot. You know, I have girls, so I'm not blessed to have boys. You know, God is paying me back for all the stuff that I did when I was younger.
Don't blame that on God. Don't blame that on God.
You know what I mean? Listen, fellas, listen. I did everything. Put on Tim's, hit it from the bow, all that good stuff. You know what I mean? It just didn't work. I said, hey,
man.
I got something for you.
This is a family show, man.
Oh, my. Hey, bro, this Barber Shop Talk. You know what I mean? We having this
It's
conversation.
still family barbershop.
But
there's always one.
I am yeah, I'm that one. But you know, I'm actually learning because raising a daughter, because you know, RW know I'm a single parent, so you know, raising her, you know, it tells me to be a little bit more how they say more calmer, you know, talk in a different tone, you know, because try to be vulnerable a little bit, you know, let her know that it's okay to make a mistake. It's okay for a man to make a mistake, right? Everything that I say, you know, sometimes it might not go as planned as I wanted to, you know what I mean? But we're going to try to make it work. It's hard, man, but I'm learning, bro. It's hard, bro.
Well, that's
hard,
it.
But I'm learning, bro.
Well, if you ain't learning, you ain't living.
For real.
If you ain't learning, you ain't living. I mean, let's just be real about it. But so, if anything, because we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up. But if anything, Mac, I'm gonna start with you. If anything that you would tell people out there about vulnerability and trying to be, you know, more vulnerable, take the mask off, what advice would you give them from your own experiences? It doesn't have to be, you know, don't have to be no definition, no textbook or whatever. From your own experiences of knowing where you were at one time and knowing where you're at now in your life as far as your vulnerability level, what advice would you give people?
Again, for me anyway, my personal opinion, find something
Right.
that would be my biggest thing. Find a way to release that energy. Or find, you know, again, find someone to talk to about releasing that energy. Really.
Yeah. Talk to me, Cheney.
I just think that we need to be the change that we want to see. I mean, if we want our young men and women to be vulnerable, we have to show them certain levels of vulnerability. I mean, some people might not, it might not happen overnight, but at the same time, you know, we gotta, as we implement it in our lives, then we can show them, and I think it trickles down. I mean, I'm hoping that the next generation, though my young men will be more vulnerable and won't hold everything in and learn how to deal with those issues. So
Talk to me, Battle. Battle. It's on you, bro.
Look like he in deep
Oh,
thought.
yeah, I would probably just tell them kind of what I tell my girls now, to just try to keep your head where your body is. Your head is here. Try to keep your body there as well, because you can easily go back things that kind of like what I do sometimes, and I don't want them to do that, to go back and remember a lot of the bad things, the different things that you experiences that you had, but just try to focus on what's ahead of you. And that's kind of what I tell the girls. That's what I tell my grandkids. That's what I work. Because otherwise you'll end up being angry. You'll end up being resentful about a lot of things. So just try to stay where you try to stay ahead of those things as much as possible.
OT.
Forgiveness. I would tell them forgiveness. You gotta forgive people, because a lot of times for us not being vulnerable was because of action that might have happened for us not to be vulnerable. You know, especially when it comes down to us men. Let one person do one thing. It's over. It's over. So I would say forgiveness. Learn how to forgive. You got to learn how to forgive, because the next person might not be that way. You know, so definitely learn how to forgive, and that will help you be a little bit more vulnerable when it comes down to relationships, when it comes down to, you know, people, because you might have three best friends, and two of them best friends said something after you told them something, but that one friend never said nothing, but that one friend going to get the same thing that the other two get. So I would, you know, I would definitely say learn how to forgive, and then you'll become more vulnerable.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest thing, and I appreciate y'all for coming on today, man, because this was very insightful, giving people an idea on where we stand as Black men and our vulnerability. But I will say this about vulnerability: the word vulnerability and being vulnerable is not a curse word. It's not something we need to avoid. It's not something that, you know. I think when we talk about being vulnerable, the biggest factor we have to look at is trust people until they become untrustworthy.
Mhm.
Trust people until they show they're unworthy of being trusted. And I say that because a lot of times we won't expose what we're going through. We won't expose what traumas we're dealing with. We won't expose what's ailing us and different things like that, because we see everybody in the eyes of, are they trustworthy? Can I trust them with my whatever's going on with me? But we put the trust out there of untrusting before we put the fact of, let me give them the allowable time to show that they are not trustworthy. We don't do that a lot. We deem people untrustworthy from the start, whether they've done right or wrong. It's just our nature. And I'll say it this way: when we talk about vulnerability, we talk about therapy, we talk about these things. What we have to do is we have to find a way to put those stigmas down and seek help when help is needed.
Yeah.
Seek help when help is needed, because a lot of times a stigma for us as Black men is going and talking to not only a friend or a family member, but anybody. And understand this: if you go to a therapist, that therapist is not there to fix you. That therapist is there to listen to you. And that therapist gets paid to listen to you, just like the person that was there before you, the person that was there before him, the person before her. When you decide to go to therapy, and that's why I asked OT this question, be open, because understand this about a therapist. That therapist don't know you. That therapist don't know you, but I guarantee when you open up, that therapist knows your story, because it's not the first time they've heard it. And this is the other part. I hear people talk about therapists and saying, as a therapist, a white therapist won't understand my struggle. I got that. Go to a Black therapist then. Don't not go. Don't not go because you say a white therapist won't understand. No. It's not that. Go find your Black therapist. If you're not comfortable and you're thinking somebody might find out you went to a therapist, go to another state. Fly in. You fly everywhere else to go on vacation. Take a vacation and go see a therapist in another city.
I gotta say this. I got a therapist that will do for bono just to hear what you're talking about, Dr. Malika. So you ever, and I would tell anybody, if anybody ever need a therapist to talk about relationships, talk about problems, I'll give you her number.
Just tell now they do video too. They do video therapy. So it's not like you have to go there. So, you know, and you know, we could go down that rabbit hole for a long time, but I don't want to go there. But vulnerability. When you get off here today, anybody's listening, anybody tuning in or whatever, go hug somebody. Tell somebody you love them. That opens the door for it to become more comfortable to do it more often. It only takes one, like they always say, it only takes one step to start making progress. It only takes one hug, one I love you, one conversation to tell somebody what you're dealing with, for the floodgates to open up for you to be vulnerable the next time around and just be who you're supposed to be and take that mask off. Appreciate y'all, man. We're going to do this again. Barbershop Talk. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Thanks. I know we've been having some glitches. It wasn't just you, Battle. We've been having some technical glitches somewhere. I don't know what's going on, but hopefully the message got across. That's all we can ask for. As I always say before I sign off, well, first, let me appreciate you, Mac. Appreciate you, Cheney. Appreciate you, OT. Appreciate you, Battle. I appreciate y'all coming in and talking to the people, letting them know, because they get tired of hearing from me all the time. Let's just be real. But as I always say before I sign off from the normal speaker on this show, this is Barbershop Talk. Love yourself, love one another, keep your head up, and most definitely keep your faith in God. I'll holler at y'all. We'll see y'all again next week on the regular show. Holla. Peace.
Thanks,
bro. Thanks, fellas. See y'all later, bro. All right, fellas.
Later.
Great conversation.
Yes, love y'all, man. I love y'all.
Love you too. Love y'all,
I
bro.
would hug y'all, but some of y'all too big.
You guys.
I ain't calling you fat. I just said you big. You too big. Can't get my hand.
Yeah, big shoulder.
Love y'all.
Stay safe, man.
All right, man. Be safe out there, fellas. All right. No, man.